Hello, and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in work and in life and simplify them. And friends, I'm so thrilled about the person that you're about to hear from because she is just a breath of fresh air and a bright, shiny light of gold. However, we're going to talk about hard stuff. We're going to talk about things that don't feel like a bright ray of sunshine, just are basically crap. And that is burnout. We've all experienced it to some level or degree over the span of our careers. But I feel like, and maybe this is just me, raise your hand if this is you as well. But since the pandemic, it's getting tighter and tighter and harder and more prevalent in the workspace. So I want to talk about squashing burnout at work. And yes, my bright ray of sunshine guest, her name is Michelle Hartley. She brings over a 20-year career in HR and truly has a unique and authentic style. She regularly speaks about her lived experience with being your authentic self, dealing with burnout, mental health, and women in the workplace. And she's also a passionate advocate for her micro concepts in both inclusion and self-care. She helps organizations all across the world on a wide range of topics, including her trademark product, Banter Bingo. We'll have to ask her about that. Belonging and inclusion, insights, discovery, HR, and team building as well. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Michelle Hartley. Hey, Michelle.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I have just so enjoyed following your LinkedIn as of late because you do certain things on certain days and it just makes me giggle because LinkedIn becomes very serious and very, I don't know, just a lot of buzzwords and inspirational quotes. And then all of a sudden, Michelle runs into my feed and she's like, it's Bennett Friday. Here's what we're binning this week. Things that we're over with and done with in HR. So thank you for that because it just makes me smile.
You're so welcome. I genuinely feel like my LinkedIn is about just creating joy in as many places as I can every day. So I'm so glad that that's what it does for you.
Thank you. And, well, the reality is people get into the world of HR as a career track. Most times, I'd like to believe, because they're people. They love people, right?
Yep.
They love helping, people do their very best work. And the truth of the matter is, HR also is this grab bag of insane amounts of experience that is needed to do the job. You must not only be a great people person, a great communicator. Oh, yeah, you have to be able to mediate conflict. And do you know data analytics? Because that would be really good. And with AI and blah, 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 blah. They have so much on their shoulders, right, Michelle? Like, it's insane.
Yeah. And don't forget things like, oh, there's an event to organize. HR can do that. Oh, someone's crying. HR can do that. Oh, we've run out of toilet paper. That's HR's job. So you get all of the most ridiculous to the sublime and everything in between. So yeah, HR is a very interesting career space to be in.
And so if we were just to zoom in on HR alone, the reality is burnout happens in all departments, in all companies. There's no, telling why burnout is so prevalent. So let's talk about the telltale signs that you might be experiencing or also you might be witnessing in others that you're hitting burnout soon. What do we look for?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. And it's one that I get asked a lot. And I think in my personal experience, what was really interesting was the one that really got me was I just couldn't stop my heart racing. And that was the most weird thing. It wasn't like, a collection of palpitations. It was just constantly my heart was racing, 100 miles an hour. And so that was the first symptom that I really noticed because I think being in HR, and I guess this might resonate with some listeners here, but being in HR, you're used to running at 100 miles an hour. You're used to doing, like, managing in the chaos, doing everything, covering 101 things. And so I was used to this, like, pace and energy and drive all of the time. So all of the usual symptoms around, like, fatigue, racing thoughts, overthinking, irritability, tiredness kind of stuff, I just took as my day job, right? So it took me a really long time for me to connect to those symptoms. But in general terms, you might have things like palpitations, you might have things like troubled sleep. You might be sleeping too much,
Yeah.
irritability, feeling overwhelmed, feeling really snappy with partners, family, friends, withdrawing, isolating yourself. That for me, the biggie was racing heart and exhaustion, just that point where, because exhaustion is more than tiredness, right? So, it got to that space. I was like, I just don't have the energy to brush my teeth. I just don't have the energy to wash my face. And so those are the kinds of things where, and then all of a sudden for me, it felt like, it's this avalanche then. As soon as I'd noticed or acknowledged one symptom, everything kind of suddenly went, oh, and this, and this, and this.
Mm.
So yeah, there's a lot in there, but principally I think for me, and especially now when I look back, overwhelm, irritability, exhaustion / fatigue, and racing heart. But there are lots of other bits in there that, will come out as symptoms of burnout, like feeling really cynical, feeling numb, disengaged, feeling like you don't care, knowing that you do, but feeling like you don't, that weird detachment from, life, family, friends stuff. So those are the key ones, I think.
Well, okay. So now, while she was talking about that, you were like, yeah, tick. Yes, tick. Yes, tick. Then I think you're at the right place because we're going to talk about it. Because I think that to put a pin in what you said there, we go 100 miles an hour. We sometimes feel like a hamster in a hamster wheel. We just go, 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 that there is no time to step off the wheel and actually zoom out a little and have a bit of perspective of what is going on. And I think that sometimes I imagine for some people, sometimes me, I go, oh, well, it's because that I don't know enough about the job. And so I just need to work harder or work faster. And that will, mean that I won't feel quite as anxious or exhausted or burnt out. And that seems so counterintuitive, right?
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? You're telling me that, and I'm nodding along furiously because absolutely 100% I was the same. It became this weird thing where I was like, I'm just going to strive even harder and I'm just going to do even more because that'll fix it. Spoiler alert, it doesn't.
Definitely doesn't. No. And so when I think about like what you said also in those kind of great big brushstrokes, there are physical symptoms, there are emotional symptoms, there are mental health symptoms as well. But then, yeah, as you say, it's not about striving and driving and doing more. It's actually probably about stripping back and focusing on the highest yielding tasks on your plate and then asking for help on the other stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. I think the challenge of that is, particularly in HR, but in a lot of professions, we don't want to ask for help. A, because it feels like a bad thing. B, because often in asking for help, it feels like we could probably do it quicker in the time that it took us to ask for the help. And C, you just kind of think, oh, I'm just going to do it anyway. Like no one will help me anyway. And then you've got this inner critic, and I don't know how this resonates with you, but that I had this inner critic that just constantly lived in my head and was like, why are you asking for help? What, you just can't do it? Are you a failure now? Why can't you do it? And it just, would constantly then almost reinforce that kind of vicious circle of kind of striving, burnout, overwhelm, overachieving, people pleasing kind of stuff that just doesn't serve us.
It's dumb. It's truly dumb. And, it is everything that people say. Like, if you don't listen to your body will start to shut down. And then you have to listen to it because the physical symptoms are starting to, ramp up so big that striving and another triple latte frappuccino is not going to make it better, right? You really do have to put some serious effort towards slowing down.
Yes.
Let's talk about some misconceptions about burnout, because I think, honestly, also in the last 10 years or so, it's also become sort of this weird little buzzword, this badge of glory that, oh, I'm so busy, that you sort of secretly wear and tell all the people about on your social media. But what's the biggest misconception about burnout, in your opinion?
There's a couple for me, I think. But the first one is that burnout and recovery has to be this big, sexy thing. And actually, I don't think it does. Like burnout and recovery is very much about micro acts of self-care and building up those micro acts of self-care so that by the end of the week, you'll be 10, 12, 15% more yourself than you were at the beginning. And I feel like the other one is that there lots of people, as you said, it's become a bit of a buzzword. Lots of people now are saying, oh, I'm a bit burned out. That's not really a thing. You're just probably tired. And so I think burnout is a very real and very different experience to overwhelming chronic stress. And if you've been burned out, you very much know it. And you very much know that it's not just a bit burned out. It's literally you have broken your brain to a point at which you need to stop. And so it's very different to feeling stressed or overloaded or just busy. It's a really different thing for that. So I would also say that burnout is like a bit insidious, where it kind of creeps up on you, or maybe it doesn't with everybody, but it certainly did with me, where I just thought this was what high performers did, right? High performers worked for 15 hours a day. High performers left with the racing heart every day. High performers would get home and couldn't unclench their jaw because they'd just been so busy. You know, high performers drank lots of wine because that's the way you relax. You know, it's that kind of principle, I think, where it's so close to that hustle culture, high performance culture stuff, where we're measuring the wrong things, I think. So it kind of sits in a strange place for me. It's quite an insidious thing.
Again, it becomes this badge of glory. Like, oh, I am a high performer. And this, is the symptoms that comes with it. And I have definitely fallen into that trap as well. I would consider myself a type A card carrying control freak. I'm working on it. We're going to therapy. But it's true. You know, over the years, you get applauded for that in employee recognition programs, right? You get awards at the end of the year awards dinner for being such a high performer. That I feel like there's just a better way. There has to be a better way. And again, for me, with the Simplifiers, I'm all about that, doing less to accomplish more, focusing on those higher yielding tasks, delegating the rest, asking for help, and truly understanding your limits, but, being smart with your boundaries as well.
Yes.
So let's talk about the different phases to burnout recovery, because there's one thing to be aware of it and go, you know what, I don't have any time to deal with it. I got to keep going, right? But then there's another to go, you know what, this is serious and I'm going to take what I need to do to, recover. So to walk us through those 3 phases of burnout recovery.
Yeah. And I think when we talked offline about this, I was kind of cutting it into 3 different spaces where it's like, you're coming up to it. You can see the train heading for you on the tracks. And then there's a space where you're in it and you just know that the train's already gone by and you're stuck on it. And then there's a space where you're kind of gone past it. It's gone and been and you don't want to go there again. And so I think it's a really interesting perspective, because if somebody had captured me, if you like, in a big net before I'd burned out and said, right, this is the time, you're going to break yourself, you need to stop. It probably would have saved me from a lot of spaces that I'm in now, in terms of, having autoimmune disorders, living with real and genuine chronic fatigue, and all of those things now that I live with. And I would love to have been able to have avoided that. But again, the reality is people did tell me that. And I didn't listen. So I think part of it for me is almost, and maybe I'm answering the question too far ahead, so please stop me if I'm doing that, Mary. But it's having like the awareness about what's coming. And for me, as somebody on the other side now looking in, I am obsessed, and you'll know this from my LinkedIn, but I'm obsessed about raising awareness, talking about it, making sure that people understand that what you see on the LinkedIn video isn't everything, and the way I have to manage my energy, not my time, and, things like that. And so I think the more we talk about this stuff, the more helpful it can be. So I guess when we're at the train is coming down the tracks and we know it's coming, I think for me, it's about tuning into what's going on for me right now. So tuning into, is this a very isolated period of stress? And I know that it'll be finished in a day or 2 or a week, is a project related piece of stress, then that's cool. That's a good level of awareness. It's going to end. if it feels like even if somebody gave you an extra week in your year, it wouldn't disappear, then for me, that's about making changes. As you said, it's about making changes, delegating, asking for help, doing something differently. I think when we're then, on the train or run over by the train of burnout, I think then we're almost in kind of crisis mode where we are right. Everything stops. It's time to stop and rest and breathe, engage with medical practitioners where it's necessary, really focusing on the CBT side of things, how I can refix my brain and make new neural pathways so that I don't end up here again. Sometimes it's about medication for those symptoms, but very much for me, in that kind of being run over by the train period, I just sat in the quiet for 6 weeks and stared at the wall. I lost all of my attention span. I couldn't watch TV, I couldn't read books, I couldn't even listen to music because it was making me anxious. So all of these coping strategies that I had before burnout suddenly failed me, and I just was lost, just really lost. But having that almost like meditative quiet space where I could just, sit, be, relax, breathe, made such a big difference for me. And that's where the micro stuff kicked in for me, is then just really thinking about, what tiny acts can I do with the energy that I have that will give me benefit and make me start to feel better.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that, because my thoughts did just start to go to a very empathetic place. For those that are listening and you don't have the greatest relationship with your boss, it must be incredibly hard to reveal something like this. Like, you're seeing the signs, you are almost there, and you're feeling the pressure, and it's getting harder and harder and heavier on your shoulders. If you feel like you can't go to your boss because either they're going to put you down or put you on a reprimand, pip kind of, oh, well, you're obviously not doing your job, so let's take corrective action towards making it better, so get you back on track, kind of thing, in a disciplinary kind of way, that would be hard and heartbreaking, and I can imagine also incredibly isolating when a boss is not there and really showing that empathy back to you. What do you do then?
Yeah, that is really tough. And I must admit, I've burned out a couple of times. I'm not going to lie. I think I had to learn the lesson a couple of times. The first time I didn't have a really supportive boss, and I found that massively challenging, and I just felt really isolated. So I didn't have, so for example, if I'd broken my leg, I'd have had flowers and chocolates and people coming over and, people writing on my cast and people, sending me videos and TV recommendations. But because I broke my brain, people just didn't speak to me. And that really hurt. And I think that was really challenging. But interestingly, it fed into all of my kind of people pleasing, toxic traits, because I was like, well, if I do better and if I try harder, and if I engage a bit more, then maybe people will talk to me and be supportive and be nice to me. And so it just made it all worse. Awful.
Yes.
Awful.
And we all do it at certain aspects of our life, especially for the people pleasers out there. You're like, well, if I just try harder.
Yes. Absolutely. And I think with burnout particularly, and maybe it's a lot of mental health conditions actually, but there's a piece of shame and stigma attached to it that just makes you feel like you can't cope and you're a failure. And that again is another internal battle that you end up having. And, for me, that's why I talk so much about it, on public places like LinkedIn, because if I'd have had that, even if I'd have just been randomly scrolling to try and shut my brain up for 5 minutes, that would have been such a salve for me, is just hearing that someone else had had similar experiences. So, yeah, I think reaching out to other people is really important. Talking to people that you feel comfortable with, even if it's not your boss, is really important.
Yeah.
My team, for example, were wonderful. So I didn't have a mega supportive boss, but I had a brilliant team who were just wonderful. Because for me, in burnout, I couldn't let go of the work. My boss's solution was, well, just stop. You're off sick, just stop. And I couldn't. And actually it was worse not knowing what was happening than almost being a part of it. So my team were lovely and they were like, do you want an update today? And I was able to choose, if I wanted an update or not. And so that worked massively well for me because I was somebody who had work in their value system. So for me, work was my safe space, work was where I did well, work was my, all of my values and all of my achievement complexes all sat in work. So it instantly to have somebody switch it off was just horrifying. So
yeah. And I also imagine that, outside of work, it's important to go see your doctor. And it's important if you are seeing a therapist to reveal and open up about those things. Because once you do that, I don't know, for me at least, I feel like it releases a little bit of that heaviness, that weight that's on the shoulders and again, I think that's that shame, like trying to keep it quiet. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. You've seen the meme with everything's on fire behind you. Everything's fine. Once you release it, you then have other people that go, yeah, I see you. This is real.
Yes.
And once you're seen, I think it helps to go, okay, let's talk about what's next, right?
Yes, completely agree. Yeah. And I'm so glad you mentioned therapy. That was something that I just found so powerful. I'd been doing it for a while beforehand, funnily enough, but in that period of burnout, it was probably the most valuable thing was having a non-judgmental space where I could just share everything that was going through my head. And it was just so helpful. And that, as you say, that and the doctor was just the best thing. And doing it actually hand in hand was really helpful. So being able to do therapy plus my doctor for, medication support side was just really helpful. So yeah, definitely two powerful options there.
I can't say enough how incredibly important it is that you have a great primary care doctor. Having lived in the UK and was part of the NHS, thank you goodness, I'm so proud. I'm happy to have free healthcare over there. Let's be true. And then living in the States and having very expensive healthcare. Either place, just make sure that you find somebody that you really connect and click with, that you can communicate. And it's a two-way conversation. And if you don't have that, no matter where in the world you live, go find that person because you owe it to yourself to find a doctor who hears you, believes you, and wants to help.
Absolutely. And as you said earlier, that kind of feeling heard and seen is just so powerful. Even talking about it now makes my stomach kind of go, ooh. Like it's so powerful. It really helps. So yes, I echo your thoughts there.
So what things should you ask for, when you're asking your people leader or your HR team to support you during that before, during, or after burnout? What would you suggest?
I think the before side is another interesting one for me because I don't know if anyone, my teams did flag it to me and I didn't listen. So I think maybe before burnout, what I probably needed was somebody to just take a bit of care of me. And that sounds like the weirdest thing to say because I'm such a commercial human. But actually, if somebody had said, right, come on, we're going to go and get a coffee. I don't care what's in your diary. Come on, let's just go and we'll have that conversation. That probably would have helped because I probably would have shared a bit more. And I think that probably would have been really helpful. So if you're that person or that person, grab them, take them for a coffee off site somewhere else away from that desk, that computer, that phone, and just have that conversation. I think in it, what was really helpful for me was my team asking what I needed, because actually my boss's solution to I'm just going to shut you out didn't work for me. But my team's solution of tell me what you need, tell me how much, tell me what you need, tell me how much, tell me how I can help you was really, really good, because it wasn't that blanket, the door is shut. It was actually let's find a way that works for you. So that was really helpful. And then post burnout, this is an interesting answer because I don't think you ever are post burnout. I think and I always talk about it like an elastic band. So have like an elastic band and you kind of overstretch it. Like you can stretch it and it goes back to normal, right? But if you stretch it too far, it never quite goes back. And it's still an elastic band. It still does the job, but it never quite goes back. And actually, I don't think that's a bad thing either. And somebody asked me a while back, like, do you regret prevent your burnout? And would you, if you could wish it away, would you? And actually, I wouldn't, because it's taught me so much about, myself, my health, my worth, my well-being, what I need. So I think it's kind of thinking about post-burnout and what changes you're going to make, what things you value and you prize that you kind of lost your way with in burnout, and the things you're going to try and get back. So I think post burnout is an interesting term, but life post that period.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think in my terms, I think about like chapters, that was a chapter. I've turned the page to the next chapter. And in this next chapter, the hero has learned a few lessons, right?
Yes.
Has got the Girl Scout badges on their sash, and is, learning how to ask for what you need. And, it may be that you are just overloaded with responsibilities outside of work. Maybe you're a caretaker for your senior or aging parents or your tiny toddlers. And, just that going on the second shift after a 9 to 5 is what is completely emotionally and physically exhausting you. So you need to ask for better boundaries at work and say, you know what? I really do have to have a hard out at 5. And any emails that you send me in the evening, I promise I will respond to them the next business day, or whatever solution it is that you come to. Because ultimately, the people that hired you for a reason. You have an intelligence and a brain that solves certain aspects of the role that you've been hired for. So you, of course, as a people leader, want to empower your people to do their very best work, right? You don't want subpar. So give them the things that they need in order to equip them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's what I really liked about that is boundaries teach people how to love us. And I had a massive issue with boundaries when I first heard about them. So I just thought, I don't like them. I don't want to be a no person. And, I'm a people pleaser. I want to be nice and kind and helpful to everybody and leave myself till last. But boundaries teach people how to love us. And whenever anybody, in my life, at work, at home, friends, anywhere, puts in a boundary with me or is very boundaried in how they respond, I never think, oh, what an awful person, I'm never going to speak to them again. What I think is, I am really impressed that you've got a boundary here. I never once have I ever thought something bad about somebody who's put in a boundary. And I think that there's that kind of shame or stigma or issue with saying that boundaries mean I'm not a nice person. That is not the case. Boundaries mean you're the best kind of person because you're managing your energy, and that's the right thing.
Yeah. And to point what you said earlier, CBT, for those that don't know, that's cognitive behavioral therapy. It's an advanced form of talk therapy that helps you get it up and out of you, but then also start to reframe, reposition your belief systems, the deep-rooted anchors in your brain to start weaving a new way. Because I think a lot of times the things that we do are so dictated by our unconscious mind that, 85, 90% of every choice you make today is made by your unconscious brain, meaning your autopilot is just already decided what I'm wearing, what I'm eating, which path I'm going to go when I drive to work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in order to be able to make new choices, better choices, and, avoid repeat burnout, you have to go into that beautiful brain of yours and start to reprogram things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting. The only way that kind of landed with me was somebody said to me, your brain is like Google and it just goes to the thing that has the best search engine optimization. And I was like, aha, I suddenly understood it. Now I get it. So yes, it's a great example. It's a really good one. And that kind of moment of just going, oh, is this the right thing? Is this going to help me? Or is this something from my past that probably isn't what I need right now? So yeah, it's a really good one.
Yeah. And again, if you're a people leader and you notice somebody on your team is, showing the signs, what would you recommend to them?
I still think there's something, again, it comes back to those micro things for me, small things. So small things like asking how they are, but asking twice and meaningfully. So, hey, how are you? Is cool. And it will always get you the answer. Yeah, I'm great. but then going, well, how are you really okay? Like, what's new? How, asking a little bit more of a developing question, or just simply asking twice, can really draw out some genuine responses that you wouldn't get if you're just doing the quick run past the coffee machine. So I do think that asking meaningfully and asking twice is really powerful. I do think there is massive value in just grabbing some time, wherever, whatever, however that is, grabbing a separate lunch, grabbing a coffee away from the desk, taking time in a meeting to just go, do you know what, let's just leave the agenda and have a chat, whatever that is. But small acts of kindness can be really, really helpful in those moments. And it's an interesting one that I've done with a couple of my coachees, which you could do as a people leader actually, is saying to someone who's overworking, let's just work out your hourly rate right now, because your hourly rate, if we take the hours you're actually working and the salary you're actually being paid, is probably about, I'll say dollars because you're US, right? But £2, £2. And you're being paid a lot more than that, but not for the hours that you're working. So let's work out your hourly rate. And sometimes it needs to be like those moments to kind of almost get the reality check. I think sometimes when you're in that period of burnout, you're so overwhelmed and in that spiral, I'm just going to work harder, I'll just do a bit more, just 10 more minutes, just 5 more emails, that you forget the reality of, well, actually, that's another hour of your life you've spent here that you're not being paid for. So sometimes something like that can be really powerful, just doing the act of working out, what's your hourly rate if you carry on like this?
Oh my God, I love that. And I can imagine lots of people are starting to pull out the calculator right now as they're listening to us and going, oh crap. What have I done?
Like a proper oof moment, like, oh no.
Do you know, as we talk about suffering burnout over and over again, my heart goes out to people that have been in that cycle. And I have certainly found myself there as well. What, again, would you help and give as advice to avoid it happening again and again and truly stop the cycle?
I'm still living that one, if I'm honest. If I'm being really honest, I'm probably still living that lesson. I would say I've burned out probably 3 times. And I think each time I learned a bit more about myself. And this isn't me saying, this isn't like burnout hustle culture. I've got 3 burnout badges. This is me trying to say, I genuinely feel like I still had lessons to learn about my body, my energy, my time, and my boundaries. And so each time I then hit that place again, I was coming at it from a slightly different level of awareness and probably a slightly different level of kind of capacity for it. And so I think it's learning the lessons and paying attention to the signs are the things that will stop you doing it again. So what got me here is lesson number 1. How did I get through it is lesson number 2. And then lesson number 3 is what makes me feel better. And that's the 3 lessons I think that you need to pull out of a burnout experience in order to not go there again. And some people, as you said earlier on, personality types, card carrying type A's, people who have some of that inbuilt scaffolding in their family lives that mean that people pleasing was the way they learned to do stuff. It will take time. Sometimes it isn't a one and done. If it is, you're really lucky, but sometimes it's a couple of times, or you get so close to it that you're like, oh, hang on, this feels really familiar. I need to stop now. And remembering those lessons, I do think that burnout recovery is the same as anything else, right? Like the same as any other lifestyle change. So, dieting, it isn't dieting, is it? It's a change of lifestyle. Exercising, it's not just running a marathon, it's keeping up that consistent movement. Same thing. It's about kind of remembering what works for you and keeping it up consistently.
I think about meditation. If you've ever done any sort of yoga or meditation, the first about, 100 times you do it, it's really frustrating because you get into a meditative pose and they're like, okay, just breathe and clear your mind. And it takes like maybe 3 seconds before my mind starts to wander off and go, oh, I need to do a big shop tonight. Or, oh, I've got so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. Or, oh, I really don't want to blah, 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 blah. And I've had yoga teachers over the years that have been so good to say, just breathe and bring it back to center. Breathe and bring it back to center. And I think that's true for everything you just said there when it comes to our nutrition, our exercise routines, our burnout and our tendency for overwork. It is that awareness. I'm doing it again, aren't I? And bring it back to center, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say it's kind of acceptance or awareness, acceptance and acknowledgement. So,
Yeah.
being aware, oh, hang on, that feels familiar. That's a bit of a burnout thing.
Yeah.
Accepting that it's okay to feel those things in that moment, and then kind of acknowledging that you can move back to the middle. That's the sentence you said for the yoga phrase, but you can come back to that place of, actually, this doesn't serve me anymore and I need to do something different. That's what works for me.
And that's it. That's the piece where it's like, okay, this isn't working. I've got to do something different. And that's when you make the decision to have that micro moment, right? And say, you know what? I'm going to get away from this desk and all of these screens and sit out in the sun for 3 minutes. Because, vitamin D is incredibly important for my mental health, right?
Yeah.
It's bringing it back to center.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have all of these amazing products that you have developed over the years for companies and teams. And I just want you to briefly tell us about what in the world is Banter Bingo?
Oh, I love this. Banter Bingo is my trademark product. I feel like I've hit peak adulting now because I've got something that's trademarked, right? So Banter Bingo is my way of training out employment law and discrimination and kind of like behavioral awareness in managers. So it's a very experiential session. I run it live, face to face. There are no slides. So anybody who hates PowerPoint like me will be really happy with this, but there's no slides. Everything is done in the room, in the moment. And it's a really fascinating way to connect managers to employment law and why we do it. So we talk about banter. We have examples of banter. As the trainer at this point, it's where I'm like biting my fist, like, oh, that's really bad. But I then get them to then basically bingo, plot it back to the discrimination characteristics. And every single time you can literally see the light bulbs coming on, and managers are suddenly engaged and interested in employment law cases and compensation limits and how they're operating and their behavior. So yeah, it's a really fascinating experiential way to learn about banter and why it's bad.
Genius, absolute genius. So her website is peoplesorted.co.uk. All the links and all the resources that we talked about in today's episode, you can find over at our show notes at thesimplifiers.com. But Michelle and her team provide coaching, event facilitation, training, HR mentoring, so HR for HR professionals, and helps with just insight discovery and so much more. So make sure to click over to her website. Also, we'll have a link. You've got some free resources for our listeners. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yes, there's quite a few on there, actually. There's a few articles that might be of interest around adaptability, flexibility, and working. There's also the perfect solution for this pod is we have my micro self-care moments bingo sheet. So as you can tell, I love to have a bit of a play in life, but it's basically a small list of self-care items that you can do for yourself daily. And if you download it from the website, it's an interactive PDF. So you can literally tick boxes. If you're a type A personality and you love to get stuff done, then help yourself to my micro moment self-care bingo.
I love it. And I could see such an opportunity if you're a people leader to bring that to the next team meeting and just go, you know what, we're going to spend 10 minutes and just have a bit of a go with this. And that becomes the seed that helps open up that level of trust and vulnerability to have some of these hard conversations over time. So thank you for that. I appreciate you.
No, you're very welcome.
So we'll also link you up on LinkedIn in the show notes so people can find you and connect with you there and see all of your wonderful posts and feeds that make me smile. And Michelle, I have a few questions as we wrap up that I like to ask everybody that comes on the podcast. So here we go. First off, tell me, what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
Oh, I have a brilliant book that I am so passionate about, which is How to Own the Room by Viv Groskop. It's just the best book. It's about women and public speaking, and it's fascinating. It's really brilliantly written. It's a really easy read. I think I read it like in 2 days because I just devoured it. But she talks about lots of great female speakers and also some less great male speakers, but has some great examples about what it is to be a good speaker. So her term that I love is happy high status, and she's just brought out another book called Happy High Status, which is on my to read list. But yes, How to Own the Room by Viv Groskop, amazing reading, brilliant book, so well read, definitely worth a go.
Love it. We will link that up into the show notes if you guys are curious to find that one. Tell me about somebody in your network, somebody you know personally that you just feel is up to brilliant things. If we were to shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast.
Yes.
Who would that be?
Yes. Well, I pondered this one, and I am going to go with Samantha Garstin, who is a UK-based menstrual educator. So her mission is to basically banish the shame and stigma around periods at work. And oh my word, she is just a delight. She's a wonderful character. She talks wonderfully about periods and just really enables great conversations to happen in just such a beautiful way. So, even if you don't get on the show, she is well worth a follow on LinkedIn. She is Samantha Garstin, the period princess. So I can totally recommend her.
Love it. It's so amazing when you think about different people doing incredible work in all facets of life. And that just makes me smile from cheek to cheek there.
Yeah.
So I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
Ooh, I feel like I'm grateful for my energy today. I'm grateful for having the energy to show up and just showing up, I think. Grateful for my energy to show up today. That's my gratitude for today.
Yeah. And to point back to what you said at the very, very top that I wrote down, managing my energy, not my time. I think that's an incredibly profound statement that I will be chewing on for the next few days as well.
It's my gift to you.
Thank you. So my last question for you is this. And again, thank you so much for your time today and your energy. Someone somewhere is listening to you and I right now, and they are feeling the prickly telltale signs of burnout is on the way. And they have been squashing it down rather than squashing it outright and healing it. What's one thing you could whisper into their ear right now just to encourage them in this moment?
Ooh, I might have two things. One is I might whisper, just take a breath, which sounds really, really fluffy, right? But it just is so powerful. Just take a breath. Yeah. And then think about what they can do 1% differently from today. And that's what I would say, because 1% differently is still different and it will help.
It's so true. Michelle, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.